Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're always facing big decisions, and sometimes it feels like we're stuck between taking a leap of faith or playing it safe. Today we're going to try to unpack that. We're diving into optimism versus pessimism.
Yeah, and we'll be exploring this from all kinds of angles. We've got leadership advice, business strategies, psychology research, personal development, even a bit of philosophy.
It's a lot to cover, but our mission, I guess, is to figure out what all these sources, plus, history and inspiring figures, tell us about these two ways of looking at the world, optimism and pessimism.
And most importantly, how we can use what we learn to lead more fulfilling lives. So let's start with this idea of a bold vision. Imagine you're young Walt Disney and you're pitching this idea for like a $1 billion empire built on a mouse and fairy tales.
I mean, a mouse? Can you imagine the reactions he must have
Well,
got?
I'm sure there was plenty of skepticism, right? But Disney's belief in his vision, his optimism, that's what fueled those achievements.
And it makes you think, right? There's a study that found the top thing that set effective leaders apart was that they genuinely cared about their people. And it's interesting because for top companies, fitting in with their values and beliefs was the most important thing they looked for when hiring.
It's like believing in someone's potential. That's what can spark collaboration and lead to success. It's a ripple effect. When you inspire others, you achieve great things together.
So we see this think big attitude tied to optimism. But what about when we need a dose of reality? Like Donald Trump said, you have to think anyway, so why not think big?
That's the optimistic mindset for sure. Setting ambitious goals, pushing boundaries, it's all about optimism.
But, in dealing with Darwin, Jeffrey Moore actually warns about unrealistic expectations. So do we need both? A big vision, but also some awareness that, well, things might not always go as planned.
Absolutely, you're right. Where in your own life could thinking bigger lead to more fulfillment? It's worth thinking about maybe in your career, your relationships, or even personal goals.
Okay, now let's get a little nerdy. Let's talk about motivation and the science behind it. Have you ever noticed how driven you feel to hit that 10,000-step goal on your Fitbit?
That's a prime example of how targets motivate us. It's about loss aversion. We're programmed to avoid losing.
And check this out. There are actually more marathon runners who finish just under their target time than those who finish just over. It's like that target's pulling them in.
It shows how powerful optimism can be. Aiming high, even if we don't nail it perfectly, keeps us motivated. It's not settling for easy wins. It's about striving for excellence.
It reminds me of something Serena Williams said. I've grown most, not from victories, but setbacks. So maybe there's a time and place for pessimism too, right?
Oh, for sure. Thinking about what could go wrong, being prepared for it, that's how we build resilience and grow.
But here's the thing. Online, we see twice as many searches for success compared to failure. We love celebrating wins, but it's almost like we shy away from confronting our losses, even though they're just as common, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, think about a time you faced a setback. Maybe a little pessimism, just a bit of thinking ahead could have helped you deal with it better. Okay, so let's switch gears a bit. Teddy Roosevelt, he was known for being really good with people, right? The story goes that before meeting someone, he'd stay up late researching their interests.
Wow, sounds like you went the extra mile.
He understood the importance of emotional intelligence, understanding others' viewpoints, and that takes both optimism and pessimism.
It's interesting because studies show that implicit bias training, focusing on our biases, can actually backfire.
Right, like it's not enough just to identify them. We need a more thoughtful approach. Use optimism to be open in relationships, but pessimism to check those biases and assumptions.
So it's like acknowledging that we all have blind spots and that we need different perspectives, right?
For sure, strong relationships need that balance of openness and critical thinking. Challenge your own ideas while being open to others.
Got it. Now let's talk about this Swiss cheese theory of failure.
Yeah.
Basically, it says that big problems happen when a bunch of small ones combine in like an unpredictable way.
Yeah, and that's where too much optimism can be a problem. You might miss those small issues.
And on the flip side, too much pessimism might make you get bogged down in those little details, losing sight of the big picture.
Exactly. Like with Xenophytes, remember, they grew so fast, some might say too optimistically, that they cut corners and, well, it didn't end well.
So how do you balance that optimism for your vision with, a bit of healthy pessimism to catch those potential problems early on? It's like a tightrope walk, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. We need the drive from optimism, but also the reality check from pessimism.
Okay, so remember earlier when we were talking about motivation? Let's circle back to those ought and ideal goals from Eilert Fishbach's book, Get It Done.
Right, ought goals. Those are the ones we feel like we should do, because of expectations or duty.
And then there are ideal goals, the ones that really get us excited, that align with our values.
Yeah, those ought goals, they can feel urgent, like checking off a to-do list. But it's those ideal goals, fueled by passion and optimism, that lead to lasting fulfillment.
So it's about figuring out what truly drives you, not just what you feel obligated to do.
Right. Think about a time you accomplished something big. Were you just going through emotions, or was there genuine excitement, that optimism pushing you forward?
Now, Fishbach also makes this interesting point about beginnings and endings. They tend to stick with us more than the middle part. It's the primacy and recency effect. We celebrate the start and savor the finish, but what about all that stuff in between?
That's where persistence and resilience come in, right?
And maybe a little bit of pessimism helps there too. Like if you can anticipate the obstacles, you can figure out how to deal with them.
Exactly. It's all about finding that balance. Optimism for vision and motivation, and pessimism to keep us grounded and prepared.
Okay, so let's shift to self-control now. Optimism and pessimism play a role here too, don't they?
They do. Fishbach talks about a few strategies for boosting self-control, and a lot of them connect back to what we've been talking about, like, mentally distancing yourself from something tempting.
Like taking a step back. Right.
Exactly. And thinking about the advice you'd give to someone else in that situation.
Oh, that's funny. We always give better advice than we take, right?
Yeah.
But thinking about it that way helps us be more rational.
Yeah. Here's one that speaks to pessimism. Thinking about a temptation in really neutral terms can help reduce its appeal.
Taking the emotion out of it, just the facts.
Exactly. Remember the marshmallow test? The kids who resisted eating one marshmallow by focusing on the two they'd get later, they showed better self-control.
It shows that a little foresight,
Mhm.
anticipating the future, helps with self-control.
Right. Speaking of foresight, remember shared reality. That feeling of belonging in a group.
And how it plays a part in conformity, right? We want to fit in with our trusted circle.
Yeah, but here's the interesting part. We tend to conform more to what people say than what they actually do.
So we're influenced by words more than actions.
Makes you think, how can we use that to be more influential ourselves? Maybe it's about showing, not just telling.
Walking the walk, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to leadership now. John Maxwell, in his book, Developing the Leader Within You, talks about how important organization is for good leadership.
He even quotes Christopher Robin from Winnie the Pooh, who says, organizing is what you do before you do something, so that when you do it, it's not all mixed up.
So simple, but so true. Great leaders bring order out of chaos.
And it's not just about logistics, it's about values. Maxwell says, if people in business just told the truth, 80–90% of their problems would disappear.
That's about transparency, accountability, a culture where everyone can speak their mind.
And where trust is paramount.
Okay, let's talk about shared thinking. Maxwell says it's another key element of good leadership. It's harnessing the collective intelligence of a team.
But as Maxwell points out, shared thinking is only as good as the people doing the sharing.
So you need a team of talented people who bring different ideas and expertise, right?
It's about creating a space where everyone feels valued and can contribute.
And that's where leadership becomes less about telling people what to do and more about empowering them, right?
Think about your own leadership style. Do you give orders or actually seek input from others? Maybe a more collaborative approach could bring out the best in your team.
And it ties back to that study we talked about earlier. The one that found caring about your people was the biggest factor in effective leadership.
Right. Human connection, it's so important in leadership. When people feel valued, they go above and beyond.
It's not just about results. It's about inspiring people to reach their potential.
Now, let's talk about judgment and criticism. Maxwell says, any fool can criticize, condemn, and complain, and most fools do.
It's easy to find fault and focus on the negative, right? But true leadership takes character.
It takes understanding, forgiveness. We all make mistakes, and it's about learning, not dwelling on them.
Maxwell talks about how pointless criticism is. It makes people defensive. He even quotes the psychologist Carl Rogers, who said our first instinct is to judge, not understand.
And that brings us back to empathy. Leaders need to try and understand others before judging them.
It's about really listening, right? Everyone has a story.
Think about how you give and receive feedback. Are you critical or supportive? What if you focused on understanding instead of judgment?
Yeah, it's tough to get past that initial reaction. but it creates a much better environment for everyone.
Okay, now let's talk about praise. We all need appreciation, right? Research shows that positive reinforcement works so much better than punishment.
Catch people doing things right and let them know you appreciate it.
And be specific, point out the good that came from their actions.
Like Maxwell says, praise is like sunlight to the warm human spirit. We cannot flower and grow without it.
How often do you express appreciation to those around you? It's worth thinking about because even small gestures can make a huge difference.
So true. Okay, let's talk about personal growth now. Maxwell says, if you want to do more for others, you have to become more yourself.
Leadership is a journey, not a destination.
And it means embracing change and challenging yourself. Like Gail Sheehy said, if we don't change, we don't grow. If we don't grow, we are not really living. Growth demands a temporary surrender of security.
Right. We need to push our limits, take on new things, and keep getting better.
And overcome our fears. Fran Tarkenton, the NFL quarterback, said, fear causes people to draw back from situations. It brings on mediocrity. It dulls creativity. It sets one up to be a loser in life.
Fear can keep us playing small,
But good leaders are courageous. They face their fears and take risks.
And they know failure is part of growth. Like Henry Ford said, failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently.
Think about a time fear stopped you from doing something you wanted. Maybe if you thought of fear as a chance to grow, you had gone for it.
It's all about perspective.
Okay, moving on to the power of attitude in leadership. Maxwell says, your attitude determines your altitude.
So true. It's about facing challenges with optimism and resilience, understanding that our mindset shapes our experiences.
And taking responsibility for how we react, not letting outside things control us.
Like John Wooden said, things turn out best for the people who make the best of the way things turn out.
How would having a more positive and resilient attitude help you deal with the ups and downs of life?
It's definitely worth considering. Our attitude can make all the difference.
Okay, let's talk about passion. Maxwell says, nobody can be successful unless they truly love their work.
It's about finding what makes you tick, what gets you excited.
And it's not always about having the perfect job. It's about bringing passion to everything you do.
Exactly. Think about your passions. How can you bring more of that into your life?
That's a good question. Passion can turn ordinary things into something amazing.
Let's talk about integrity now. Maxwell says, integrity commits itself to character over personal gain, to people over things, to service over power, to principle over convenience, to the long view over the immediate.
It's about living by your values, making choices that reflect what you believe in, even when it's hard.
And understanding that leadership isn't about power, it's about serving others.
Like Abraham Lincoln said, nearly all men can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man's character, give him power.
How can you be more honest and have more integrity? Think about how making choices that reflect your values could lead to a more fulfilling life.
It's a journey, for sure, but a worthwhile one.
Now let's talk about people development. Maxwell says, make people development your top priority.
Good leadership is about helping others succeed, sure.
Absolutely. Investing in their growth, helping them reach their full potential. Maxwell says, limit who you take along. You should spend 80% of your time developing only the top 20% of the people around you.
So focusing your efforts where they'll make the biggest impact.
Right. Nurturing the talents of those who want to grow and giving them chances to learn and develop.
Creating an environment where they feel supported to go beyond their comfort zone.
Think about the people you lead. How can you invest more in their growth?
It's a good question because by helping others grow, we create a ripple effect of positive change.
Now let's talk about communication, a crucial aspect of leadership. Peter Drucker, he's considered the father of American management, said 60% of all management problems are the result of faulty communication.
That's a lot. It shows how important clear communication is in leadership.
And Maxwell says that not listening well is one of the biggest communication problems.
We hear what we expect, not what's actually said. Or we're already thinking about what we're going to say back instead of really listening.
In The Magic of Thinking Big, David Schwartz said, big people monopolize the listening. Small people monopolize the talking.
It's a good reminder that good leaders really listen. They try to understand the other person before speaking.
Think about how you listen. Do you interrupt? Do you finish other people's sentences? Do you start planning your response before they're even done talking?
Truly listening with an open mind is hard. But when we do, we learn so much and build better relationships.
Now let's shift to understanding people. Maxwell says, if you can learn to understand people, how they think, what they feel, what inspires them, how they're likely to act and react in a given situation, then you can motivate and influence them in a positive way.
So recognizing that everyone's different, with their own values and experiences.
Yeah. And connecting with them on a deeper level, Maxwell says everybody wants to be somebody and be valued by others.
Leadership isn't about power. It's about genuine relationships built on trust.
Albert Einstein said something really insightful about this. He said, "Strange is our situation here upon earth. Each of us comes for a short visit, not knowing why, yet sometimes seeming to divine a purpose. From the standpoint of daily life, however, there is one thing we do know, that man is here for the sake of other men."
What a beautiful thought. It reminds us that we're all connected.
Think about the people you lead. Do you really understand what they need and what motivates them?
It's important to ask yourself that, because good leadership is built on strong relationships.
Now let's talk about Maxwell's 5 levels of leadership. It's a way to understand how leadership develops.
Okay, so he starts with position. That's the most basic level where people follow because they have to, because of your title.
Right. Then there's permission, where people follow because they want to, because of the relationships you've built.
The third level is production, where people follow because of what you've accomplished, your success.
Next is people development. People follow you because of what you've done for them, how you've helped them grow.
And finally, the highest level, personhood. People follow you because of who you are, your character, your integrity.
It shows how leadership can move from being about authority to being about who you are as a person.
Think about your own leadership journey. Where do you fit within these 5 levels?
It's a good way to reflect on your leadership style and see where you can grow.
Now, let's talk about this idea from our research, that success should be about more than just achievements. It should include personal growth and morality.
Right. It's like a bigger view of success, not just about what you accomplish, but who you become.
Like Sir Edmund Hillary, the first person to climb Mount Everest, said, "It's not the mountain we conquer, but ourselves."
It's about the journey, not just reaching the peak.
Think about how you define success. Is it all about what you achieve, or does it include personal growth and character?
It's an important question because it affects the choices we make.
Okay, let's talk about Martin Seligman's 5 elements of a good life. It fits in with this bigger idea of success.
Right, so he starts with positive emotions, like optimism and resilience.
Then engagement, finding activities that you're passionate about.
Positive relationships, having meaningful connections with people.
Meaning finding a purpose bigger than yourself.
And accomplishment, the satisfaction of achieving your goals.
It covers both the internal and external things that contribute to a fulfilling life.
Think about your own life. How well do you embody those 5 things?
It's a good self-check, It helps us see where we can improve. So what are some practical ways to cultivate these qualities?
Well, one idea is to make a personal scorecard of character traits you value, both for how you treat yourself and how you treat others.
It's about figuring out what's important to you and then making a conscious effort to live by those values.
Another suggestion is to write about those values. Research shows that doing this can help you be more open-minded and tackle difficult issues.
So it's like making your values more concrete.
Exactly. Think about the traits you admire in others. How can you work on developing those in yourself?
It's a journey of self-discovery, but it can lead to a more meaningful life.
Now let's talk about the importance of love, and not just romantic love. Our source material talks about it in a broader sense, like deeply caring for others. They even suggest it as a business strategy.
So like creating a workplace where you value people, recognizing their needs and aspirations.
Exactly, a culture of kindness and respect.
Think about your workplace. Does it feel caring, or is it more impersonal?
It's important to think about because those relationships at work have a huge impact on us.
Okay, now let's talk about marketing. Our source material argues that good marketing isn't about hype, it's about connecting with people who want to connect with you.
Right. It's about creating something valuable that meets a real need.
Something people would miss if it was gone. And it's about listening to your customers, figuring what they want, and giving it to them.
They even say, make something for the few, something so extraordinary and powerful that they would miss it if it were gone. Something remarkable enough that they will tell the others. Watch what they do and listen to what tomorrow's users want. Add that to your product.
So quality over quantity, focusing on making something truly great that resonates with a specific audience.
Right. Think about your own approach to marketing. Are you trying to reach everyone, or are you building genuine connections with a smaller, more engaged group?
In today's world, being genuine can make a huge difference.
Okay, let's move on to AI. artificial intelligence. It's everywhere these days, even in the workplace.
It's changing everything.
Our source material suggests that people who can use AI in their work, especially in sales, are going to have a real advantage.
It's about embracing new technology and using it to be more productive.
But it's not about AI replacing humans, right? It's
Yeah.
a tool that can help us do more.
So how could you incorporate AI into your work? It's something to think about.
Yeah, adapting to these changes is super important.
Now let's talk about me management. It's about managing your time and energy effectively, something that's more and more important these days.
Right. Our source material talks about thinking like a CEO, ruthlessly prioritizing tasks, managing your calendar and attention, and using time blocking.
It's about taking control of your time and focusing on what really matters.
Yeah, and finding ways to avoid distractions.
Think about how you manage your time and energy. Are you intentional about it, or do you just go with the flow?
It's a crucial question because how we manage ourselves affects everything else.
Okay, let's talk about friction in the creative process. It sounds strange, but research shows that teams actually do better creative work when they slow down and even come up with a lot of bad ideas first.
Yeah, Ed Catmull from Pixar, the animation studio, says the goal isn't efficiency, it is to make something good or even great. We iterate 739 times with friction in the process.
So creativity isn't always a straight line. There are detours and roadblocks.
But those moments of friction, they can lead to better ideas in the end.
Think about how you approach creativity. Do you embrace the messiness of it all, or do you prefer things to be more structured?
It's something to consider because being open to friction can help you be more creative.
Now let's talk about subtraction and problem solving.
We often try to add things when we have a problem. More features, more complexity. But Leidy Klotz, who wrote the book Subtract, says, we are wired to neglect subtraction and use addition as a substitute for thinking.
So sometimes the best solution is to take something away, not add something new.
Exactly. It's like decluttering your house or simplifying a process.
Think about a problem you're facing. Could you solve it by subtracting something?
It's a good way to challenge your assumptions.
Okay, now let's talk about coordination and organizations. It's so important for success.
But as our source material highlights, even the best organizations struggle with coordination problems.
Those breakdowns in communication and collaboration.
They often happen when those in power ignore or undermine the people they need to work with, or when they don't prioritize finding solutions to those coordination challenges.
It's like everyone's working on their own thing without thinking about how it all fits together.
Exactly. Our source material calls out two specific problems: component focus and partition focus.
So component focus is when people get so focused on their own tasks that they forget about how it affects everyone else.
It's like working in silos. And partition focus is when there's not enough attention paid to how different parts of an organization should work together.
Think about your workplace. Are there any places where these coordination problems are getting in the way?
It's something to pay attention to because fixing these problems can make a huge difference in productivity.
Okay, let's shift gears now and talk about the downsides of going too fast.
Right. I mean, sometimes that sense of urgency can be good, but pushing too hard for speed can lead to burnout, selfishness, bullying, bad decisions, even like stifled creativity.
Yeah, no one wants that.
So you got to balance speed and quality. Push for results, but also take care of the people involved. That's how you get sustainable success.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So in your work, is there too much emphasis on speed? Is it hurting the quality of work or, how people feel? It's worth thinking about.
Definitely. Okay, here's something interesting. Did you know that people actually regret things they didn't do more than things they did?
Really?
Yeah, it's called the boldness regret. It's like we focus more on past mistakes than missed opportunities.
Oh, I know that feeling all too well.
But research shows that, in the long run, we regret those chances we didn't take more. It's a reminder that, growth comes from stepping outside your comfort zone, trying new things, taking risks. So true. Think about your own life. Are there any missed opportunities that still bug you?
It's something to think about. It can tell you a lot about how you handle risk and challenges.
Okay, let's talk about quitting. We usually think of it as a bad thing. But Annie Duke, who wrote Quit, The Power of Knowing When to Walk Away, says it can actually be a good strategy.
Right. It's about knowing when to cut your losses and move on to something better.
She says we often quit too late because we don't want to face the certainty of failure, even when things are probably not going to work out.
It's tough knowing when to keep going and when to let go.
Think about a time you stuck with something way too long. Maybe if you had understood that sunk cost fallacy thing, you would have quit sooner. Sometimes walking away is the best thing you can do.
Absolutely. Okay, here's another key takeaway. We need to challenge our own beliefs. Adam Grant, in his book Think Again, talks about how we can get so stuck in our ways that we refuse to see other perspectives.
It's hard to admit we might be wrong. But if we want to grow, we have to question what we think, be open to new information, and, change our minds when we see evidence that we should.
So it's about being humble, knowing you don't know everything.
And actively looking for different points of view, engaging in debate, being willing to change your mind.
Think about something you believe in strongly. Are you open to hearing other opinions?
It's tough to get outside our echo chambers, but when we do, we learn and grow.
All right, as we wrap up this deep dive, let's leave you with something to ponder. If you were making a list of traits for a truly fulfilling life, which would be more important, optimism or pessimism?
That's a great question. Maybe it's not about picking one, but finding the right balance. Optimism to fuel your dreams, pessimism to keep you grounded.
It's all about self-discovery and learning, right? We hope you'll check out the sources we've discussed and keep exploring this whole idea of optimism and pessimism.
There's so much more to uncover.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.